Tony Pitts. We got more questions.
Shoot.
This question is interesting to me. I'm sure interesting to others that may not know. But somewhere in the process, I heard you owned a nightclub. The Lumberjack, I believe, correct?
Club Lumberjack.
Club Lumberjack. So, the people want to know, how old were you? And where did you get the idea to open up a nightclub? And who were some unforgettable names we all may know that you know, or have had the pleasure of meeting or working with? And in what way did those people influence or affect your life, if at all?
Alright, that was a lot.
I'm sorry. I'm going to take it in 3 parts, but first question is, how old were you?
What was that? I want to say 90, 89. So I think I was like 19. Telling my age.
89.
I think I was like 19. So, yeah, I was 19. Where did I get the idea from? So, okay, so I went to Pierce College. At that time, it was a junior college, a 2-year college, downtown Philly. And I met a guy named Big Kenny. Big Kenny, super big guy. And so at that time, everybody was rapping, right? So I had a little rap group, and I'm rapping, and I meet Big Kenny, and he's like, oh, I got some friends with studio and South Philly, and so we ripping and running. So I ended up making him the manager for my group. So in our rap songs, I would call him, I would say, yeah, Big Kenny the Lumberjack, Big Kenny the Lumberjack. So if you ever see Kenny, he's about a big 300-400 pounds, 6'5", just giant. And so I called him the Lumberjack. So eventually so the whole thing was really his idea. So we're rapping, and he meets a guy, a guy well known in Philly back in that time named Bobby Dance. And Bobby kind of took us under his wing and taught us how to promote parties and concerts and all that kind of thing. Okay. So all we really did was handing out flyers. We hit all the schools and all that kind of stuff.
I remember the Bobby Dance days. Okay.
Yeah. So we learned, and I remember like the first event. I mean, it was at I think it was at a hotel or something like that. But it was literally thousands of teenagers, and I was shocked because I knew that was because of our hard work.
Right.
We put the word out, and again, he taught us, and so we would do these events for Bobby, and there was one particular party, we in the hotel, and it's time to get paid. Now I'm watching, it's thousands of dollars coming to that gate, and so at the end of the night, love Bobby, he gave us $200. And I looked at Kenny, and he gave me my cut. I had 2, he had 2. And at that moment, I was like,
you quit?
I could do this.
You was ready. You was ready to go.
So, but we kept working with Bobby, but in the background, my ambitious self was trying to put something together. So eventually, we met a guy named Robin White. And my man Big Kenny the Lumberjack was handing out flyers on the back of a bus. Robin White got a flyer, and he's like, hey young man, what's this all about? Long story short, Robin introduced us to a club owner at 7th and Arch. At the time, I think his name was Mr. Victor Washington, and so he gave us a night. So Kenny was like, yo, we're gonna have our first event. And so I'm all excited. So we made up our flyer. We didn't have no money, so our flyers were literally that we wrote. It weren't printed at no fancy shop, no Kinko's and that. And it wasn't the little cute square ones. It was a whole sheet of paper.
Wow.
So we we handing them out, like, yeah, lumberjack, and Bobby was famous for Super Sunday, No School Monday. So he would find nights where there was no school on Monday because of a holiday, and we could get into a nightclub cheap, or because it's a Sunday. They weren't going to open anyway, for one.
Right.
And then two, we did a lot of team parties, so they would lock up the liquor and it would be okay. So we bust our butt for 3-4 weeks to promote the party. So we're in a nightclub, and at this point it was either a hotel, a YMCA, a gym, a ballroom, but nobody had a nightclub.
Right.
So here we are at Rhythms 2, 7th and whatever in Arch.
7th.
No, that was Lumberjack.
Okay.
It was further down, but
Okay.
it was 2121 Arch Street. And
He remembers.
so here we are. So first night, we got everything going. The lights is going.
Huh?
DJ night. Everybody is we all ready, and it's crickets. Listen, there wasn't nobody in this. I think we had like 4 people all together, and then staff.
Oh wow.
And so needless to say, it was just me and Kenny sitting in the middle of the floor, back to back, and he leaned over. We made $2. He leaned over and handed me my $1, and he took his $1, and we took our raggedy butts home for the night. And the next morning, I'm trying to figure out, I need to get go to. I don't think I had a job or nothing at the time. So he called me up like, "What you doing?" I'm like, "What you mean?" He was like, "We got a party to promote." What? I'm like, "Nigga, I'm not. It's over. Like, what you talking about?"
We made $2.
We made $2. You think I'm gonna continue on this route? He really taught me. He was just like, "Yo, come on, let's go."
Wow.
He had another batch of flyers, and we went. And I learned from that, perseverance. I learned.
I think it's a transformer back here. I'm not
That's
sure.
the keys on my body. And I learned to just kind of I learned to not give up. That was my first lesson at like 18, 19 years old, however old I was. And
That's an awesome not give up story. Like you were like in the midst of not give up.
That day was over. If he didn't call me, I didn't have no intentions on continuing. So we went out that day. I had a little orange Toyota, and Kenny was so big, I think he bent the seats in the car. Like,
oh, that's funny.
That's how bad twisted they were.
Oh.
And but we would hit the streets. We go to all the high schools, handing out the flyers. So here it is, Sunday again, and okay, we got 10 people, and we kept going, 50 people, 100 people,
Wow.
500 people, and we made Rhythms 2 so hot. The place only held about 500. We would pack this Sunday night with, it would be 500 people inside and at least another 1,500 people outside who couldn't even get in.
Wow.
The whole street would be flooded. I mean, we had the fire department come in and close us up. It just got terrible. And at that time, ownership had changed hands, and we were working with a gentleman named Garnett Littlepage. He had took over ownership, and he's still a dear friend and mentor of mine today. And we just overgrew it, and we were doing great. And so we had gotten shut down for a while, and Garnett was like, "Well, we're gonna need a bigger place." So we ended up.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, it took us some time, but I think we had saved up probably upwards of $100,000. As you know, none of that went into our pockets. We just kept putting it until we was able to get our own building. And to think about a year later, Garnett had secured a lease. He had become our partner and financier, and so he asked me, he's like, "Well, what we going to name it? We got this new club. We had Rhythms 2. Now what we going to name it? Club Lumberjack."
Wow.
And that's what it was. And if anybody is from that time, I don't even need to tell you how crazy that was.
Interesting.
And that was.
So
that's where it came
so
from.
did Club Lumberjack turn into also like a venue space for entertainment as well, or did you?
Yeah, we did parties, but then we started to do concerts.
Okay.
That was another thing we learned originally from working with a lot of people. We worked with Back then you had Charlie Mack. Shouts out to Charlie. We did a lot of joint ventures with him because he had the connections with all the celebrities. We did concerts in conjunction with Power 99. The radio stations, they would bring artists, Golden Boy, Kobe Cole. They would bring us artists. And it was cool. So we had KRS-One. We had Tupac. We did Boys II Men birthday party. I think it was Wanye or Nate, one of those guys. We did Wu-Tang. We had MC Light. We had everybody at that time.
So another part of that question is, with all that, with all the celebrities coming through, were there any relationships that you built with these celebrities? Anything you learned from them? Like, what's backstage? What's behind the scenes?
You know what I learned?
What's the behind the scenes junk?
I got a little regrets because my little arrogant chocolate soul.
Oh, what he done did?
I thought I was too cool. So obviously back then there was no cell phone, so you didn't. Everybody now could just take pictures all day long. You didn't have cell phones. You barely had a pager. You definitely didn't walk around with a camera, right? So I got to be around a lot of celebrities, but I was too cool to ask for pictures. Like, I wish I wouldn't have been so cool.
Okay.
Because I would have had tons of great pictures. But I don't have a lot of them. I got flyers, but I don't have a lot of them. But everybody was interesting. Tupac, very quiet. Very quiet.
Tupac. Quiet.
Not the flamboyant person that you kind of see in public. He's real laid back. He's real quiet. He's real cool. Didn't say much. KRS-One on the other hand was he was braggadocious. He would look out the window, and I remember Garnett he said, "Dad, Chris, all these people here for you." He was like, "Of course." Like, he knew Chris, and this was around the time when Black Cop was out. Black Cop, and he was popping, and but most of the time the relationships were, you paying, you give them a nice VIP room,
the green room kind
of thing, and then I'm working. So, but as far as relationships, I think I spent time with Fat Joe and Big Pun. We had brought them in town and this was before Pun was, nobody even knew who he was. Everybody just knew Fat Joe from it was the Jealous Ones Envy album, and I had them all weekend, and they're best friends. So the funny is, them two together, yeah, that's a whole nother segment. That's a whole nother segment.
Okay.
But the funniest thing with them, it was the last day, and it was a Fridays on Ben Franklin Parkway, and so before they leave, because this was the last day, it was Sunday, they talking trash the whole weekend, and so they decided they want to race, because Pun like, "Oh, I could beat your fat butt," and he's like, "Oh, shut up, you can't beat me, I could still." So
running.
I don't know if those are some super big round dudes, all right, and Pun was short with these two little short legs, and
they gonna run.
They gonna race down Ben Franklin Parkway in front of Fridays.
Wow.
And it was the funniest. It was like somebody just rolled 2 bowling balls down the street at the same time, and they just went. I don't know who won because I was too busy laughing and crying. But
wow.
Joe, he has a Don-like personality. He would take us down to 5th Street. I think he got more family in Philly than we got. He would take us down 5th Street where a lot of Hispanics are at, and he would speak Spanish and take us to all the little restaurants and all that. But real cool dude.
So there were ultimately relationships that you built with, some of the celebrities that we know today, still in the game. Yeah. Back then.
Yeah. The funny thing is a lot of people that were behind the scenes back then are like huge now. Like Lil Troy is one.
Now who's Lil Troy?
So Lil Troy, I mean his resume is crazy. So I mean, he's promoted at my club. We were going to do joint ventures together. I think he was doing Black Moon. I think we were doing Apache. But long story short, at this point, Troy is like, I mean, he's a big star. He's a part of. He owns a huge chunk of Spotify, Uber. He's most famously known for being the manager for Lady Gaga.
Wow.
A lot. I mean, that's just.
And you knew Lil Troy when he was.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's taking time to sit down and have
That's
lunch
awesome.
with me and
That's
talk.
awesome.
But he's huge. He's huge.
That's
huge.
good. That's it.
He's huge.
It's
I think he
interesting to see
hosted
the
Shark
progress.
Tank. And,
Yeah. Okay.
he's been in Inc. magazine
Yeah.
and he's
That's awesome.
Troy's out of here.
Pew.
Yeah, he's big. But
Cool.
yeah, the most
So would you
rewarding
say-
part was the people
so-
behind the scenes that are big now.
What would in this kind of segment? What would you take away from the experiences with the celebrities and the club scene, and how do you, or what do you take from that into entrepreneurship, or into what was your next steps, and leading into a couple of other questions that we've gotten from some folks.
I'll say that I believed in myself. I believed that I could do something, even as a kid.
Yeah.
And to see it all come into fruition, to go from a kid and now I'm like around all these celebrities, was cool. To go from writing a flyer, handing it out, learning how to write a radio ad, getting it, listening, being outside and somebody ride by and they're like, if it ain't lumberjack, it's whack. And I know I wrote that.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that was big as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had to remind myself, like, dude, you can do it. So that was a big thing.
Awesome takeaway.
Yeah, just knowing that you could do something, knowing that you could take something from nothing, and other people can kind of engage and interact with whatever your creation or your service or your product is. It's kind of dope.
Well, that whole
Was that all the questions?
that was all of that question.
Okay.
The last part of that was just the influences, but I want to say thank you for sharing that story. It was funny. It's cool to hear some of what these big names were doing way back then and where they are today and where you are and where you were. So